Today we're going to talk about how Zoom took over the world, became a $4.5 billion company with over 200 PMs.
Zoom during the pandemic grew from 1 to 4 billion in revenue. We grew to 7,000 employees. We grew our product team from just over 20 to north of 200. I joined Zoom in January of 2020, so right before COVID started. And by March, obviously things were going really quickly.
Take us behind the scenes there. How did it work when you guys had to institute that 3-month feature freeze?
Yeah, I mean, that was Eric's leadership, was daily Tiger team meetings with the E-staff to review issues, marshal all the resources we needed to move as quickly as we could.
So you mentioned $4.5 billion. That's a crazy number, right? What's the biggest mistake you guys made during that pandemic growth period?
Sometimes it takes the same amount of time to just think slightly differently about something that might last a little further or scale a little bit better, especially with the AI front. We're growing our AI usage by almost 60% on a quarter-over-quarter basis. Our operating cash flow is still really strong and growing at 22% as well. So
you basically have like a live transcription going, and then you probably hook up into like an OpenAI API to like answer questions or something like that, or how did you guys build that?
Yep, it's something along those lines, right? So you have to turn on the AI so that we do get the transcript, and then the transcript can be leveraged to provide those types of tools. And then when the AI is enabled as well, that's also the tool that we use to generate the meeting summary, which is something that shows up after the meeting is over.
Was there a time when you made a mistake that you would look back and say that could have been done better?
Probably a lot of the mistakes just came from trying to deal instantly and as quickly as we could with many issues. If I were in that situation again, do my best to try and insert some of that type of thinking. But
if you had to redesign Zoom from scratch for 2025, what would it look like? Really quickly, I think a crazy stat is that more than 50% of you listening are not subscribed. If you can subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple or Spotify podcasts, my commitment to you is that we'll continue to make this content better and better. And now on to today's episode. We have John Beckmann. He heads up webinars and live events product for Zoom. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How big is Zoom today?
Zoom at the moment is a little bit north of 4.5 billion in revenue, which a lot of people don't know, which is a pretty big number. We're over 7,000 employees, which is quite a bit of growth since pre-COVID days and our IPO. And you know, we've got a lot of exciting things going, especially with the AI front. We're growing our AI usage by almost 60% on a quarter-over-quarter basis. Our operating cash flow is still really strong and growing at 22% as well. So there's a lot of metrics we're really excited about.
So the metric that you didn't mention is that revenue growth rate. That's in that single-digit growth rate. And sometimes I hear people saying, hey, is Zoom getting overbloated with too many features?
Well, that is, I suppose, in the eye of the beholder. I mean, that's a risk that all products run when they get more mature. But you know, our founder and CEO Eric is always preaching the gospel of simplicity and usability, and so we're constantly reviewing all aspects of the meeting experience and all of our products experience to make sure that we're maintaining that usability and trying to strike the balance between functionality and usability.
So for over 3.5 years, you led the meetings team. Can you give us a story of when you guys simplified the UX, or how were you guys doing that really specifically?
Sure. I think one example that is pretty interesting is actually around the raised hand feature, which some people might not really think all that much about. But video conferencing is a very psychological product where people are looking at themselves and looking at each other. And this raised hand feature really became a source of a lot of feedback. And we did things like understanding the order in which those raised hands came, worrying a lot about how to dismiss the raised hand once the question was answered, and allowing the host to manage those raised hands. And that's all really reflective of going pretty deep on what's a simple feature, but it matters a great deal in meetings where you're trying to manage people asking questions.
That's one I use a lot. That's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned $4.5 billion. That's a crazy number, right? And a lot of that growth came during the pandemic. I think you guys went from something like 1 billion to like 3 or 4 billion in that period.
Yeah.
What's the biggest mistake you guys made during that pandemic growth period?
Oh gosh. Well, my perspective is this company, I joined Zoom in January of 2020. So right before COVID started. And by March, obviously things were going really, really, really quickly. And that's where I think in very short order, attained that 4 billion run rate that you referenced. And of course, on that growth path at the time, in the first half of 2020, the whole world transitioned to using Zoom, and it was really, really exciting, but also really, really stressful. And we don't think of it so much more as mistakes as sort of trying to keep up with what was a really, really unique situation. And I think what we did is listen very closely and react very, very quickly. I was on a part of leading a effort to focus on some of the challenges we had during COVID for a 3-month period where it was feature freeze on anything other than what was going on in the market. And so
Wow.
we were trying to, address the needs of education customers that were all trying to go online. We were building security features to help people control access to their meetings and all sorts of things like that. So I'm really, proud of that phase. On the product side, it's pretty interesting as a longtime enterprise software person. It's not often you have that sense of mission and the sense of really sort of helping the world, but certainly at that time period and probably for another year or two, that was the case at Zoom. So it was pretty terrific.
Can you take us behind the scenes there? How did it work when you guys had to institute that 3-month feature freeze? Was it Eric, you, engineering lead, all in a war room looking at the situation with new features? How did it come about? Because that's an awfully long time.
That was Eric's leadership. Sort of made it very straightforward. Everybody's eyes were all on the same list of things. And my boss, the CPO at the time, had asked me to help basically project manage that across our product portfolio. And, tactically what it looked like was daily Tiger Team meetings with the E-staff to review issues and marshal all the resources we needed to move as quickly as we could. It was really like a great forcing function and focusing function that aligned sort of everybody in the same direction.
The last time I had one of those was actually at the same time period in the world, COVID scaling up. I was working on Fortnite, and at the time we were putting on these series of live concerts. So we did this concert with Travis Scott, and we were trying to increase the amount of concurrent users we had. 28 million people tried to come in. We were only able to let 21.5 million people come in. And I remember Tim, the CEO, basically did the same thing that it sounds like Eric did, daily Tiger Teams. For people who haven't been behind the scenes on that, what was your life like as a product leader? How are you preparing for those daily Tiger Team meetings? Who was in your close circle helping you prepare and make sure you had the right progress?
It was extremely collaborative. When you're doing daily Tiger Teams, there's not necessarily a lot of prep because you're spending most of the time between those meetings actually executing. I did have my team of PMs that would help and help with any project that we had going. I was working very, very closely with our CPO on all of these initiatives, and so it was more providing updates sort of real time as opposed to preparing like you might ordinarily do on something with a slightly lower cadence. But one of the things that is truly, truly amazing is how Zoom scaled during that time. And of course, when COVID hit, all the metrics went through the roof. But the most impressive thing is the platform, the number of users just shot through the roof and everything kept working. The platform was really built for scalability. And Eric has always said, building just a video interface is not the hardest thing in the world. Building one that can handle billions and billions of minutes every day is actually quite a challenge. So it's almost like we didn't have to worry about that. We could focus on the other issues, which was great.
If you were coaching a product leader who's going through a crazy scaling phase like that, what would be your advice to them?
Let's see. I would start really, really, really thinking about how you track all the things that you need to get done. And it's not, by that I don't just mean a to-do list. What I mean is things start coming at you in avalanche type waves of asks and requests, whether it's feature requests or bugs you need to fix, et cetera. And so I tried to create this system that bucketized things by groups and then kept on digging further down, and then had a way of keeping track of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things. So in that particular situation where you're scaling at that rate, I think putting those systems in place for yourself to just manage is really, really important. And then you quickly have to transition to looking at scaling all of the different channels, right? How do you handle, we got thousands of feature requests for meetings in a 6-month time span during COVID. How do you handle that internally for the systems? Just keeping them, tracked somewhere, let alone prioritized. How do you handle all the feedback that is coming in that is not feature requests? What parts of the UI might need to scale when, all the numbers kind of go up? And so thinking really quickly about those systems, even on the product management side, we went from not really needing a tool to start looking at the tooling we were using for roadmap planning and communication. And that happened very, very quickly because we had to, because we were scaling up. So ideally, either you or somebody can think about those issues while you're also sort of putting out fires. And of course, I'm talking about what is a fairly unique and extreme scaling scenario that, it's a nice problem to have, and lots of companies do have it, but it's not that common to scale that quickly.
Today's episode is brought to you by Jira Product Discovery. If you're like most product managers, you're probably in Jira, tracking tickets and managing the backlog. But what about everything that happens before delivery? Jira Product Discovery helps you move your discovery, prioritization, and even road mapping work out of spreadsheets and into a purpose-built tool designed for product teams. Capture insights, prioritize what matters, and create roadmaps you can easily tailor for any audience. And because it's built to work with Jira, everything stays connected from idea to delivery. Used by product teams at Canva, Deliveroo, and even The Economist. Check out why and try it for free today at Atlassian.com/product-discovery. That's Atlassian.com/product-discovery. Jira Product Discovery. Build the right thing. AI evals are one of the most important skills for PMs, and I know you know they matter. The question is, are you doing them right? Most teams are winging it with basic metrics and hoping for the best. Meanwhile, the teams that actually ship reliable AI, they've cracked the code on systematic evaluation. Today's episode is brought to you by the AI Evals for Engineers and PMs course by Hamal Hussain and Shreya Shankar. This live Maven course will teach you the battle-tested frameworks from Hamal and Shreya, who are the engineers behind GitHub Copilot's evaluation system and 25+ production AI implementations. 4 weeks, live instruction. Next cohort starts July 21st. Start shipping AI that actually works. Enroll at maven.com with my code AG-product-growth for over $800 off. That's AG-PRODUCT-GROWTH. If you had to look back and say, was there a time when you made a mistake that you would look back and say, that could have been done better?
Lots of times. But if I had to sort of identify more of a theme than an individual instance, I think it would be, even when you're scaling that fast, try and think about those things that I just talked about. Probably a lot of the mistakes just came from trying to deal instantly and as quickly as we could with many, many issues. And sometimes it takes the same amount of time to just think slightly differently about something that might last a little further or scale a little better. So if I were in that situation again, which hopefully we're not as a planet, but I would do my best to try and insert some of that type of thinking. But
so after that amazing pandemic growth,
yeah,
I think Zoom kind of became the poster child for having issues with their valuation having been overinflated, seeing the stock price decrease, and even having to do some layoffs. For you as a product leader, how do you handle that?
Well, you try and focus on the things that you can control. We can't control certainly what COVID was causing in the world, and with Zoom, we can't control the stock price, et cetera. What we can control is trying to continue to build the best product we can, listen really, really closely with our customers and try and innovate as quickly as we can, because that in the long run is always going to be the answer to whatever problem you have, whether that's existing products or trying to meet new needs with new products.
I think that's the critical part, right? Is being human to human.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to shift over a little bit. Since those layoffs, I think you guys have been doing quite well. What do you think is the most impactful thing you guys have shipped since then?
Well, I think the AI Companion is probably going to be at the top of the list. And AI Companion is an AI capability that we have that does a lot of things, but meeting summary is probably the top of that list. And we have the best meeting summaries in the world. They're available right after a meeting, and I use them all the time. If I can't go to meetings, I can read the meeting summary, I can follow up, and that capability is just continuing to evolve with the types of summary and the formats and the output of that. So I think that's really the most impactful thing, and that's really how AI is going to probably drive meetings, forward.
What do you see as the future for AI in meetings? Are we going to have AI avatars attending meetings for us?
I think it's going to be a mix of things. Yes, maybe. I think what'll be important is that people just know what's going on. If you have the ability to send an avatar of yourself in your stead, then other people should know that. And in some cases that can work. In other cases, it's not going to work quite as well. And so I think it's going to be a mix of things. I think a lot of the power of AI is going to come from leveraging the content of a meeting where so much rich activity happens, important discussions, important decisions, action items, and continually leveraging that meeting content to make your workflow go faster and more efficient, I think is really the important part. People talk a lot about the AI avatars and all that, which I think will inevitably be part of it. You're already, seeing some versions of that. I've got sort of more AR, VR like avatars that are already available and have been for a while. So it'll be a mix of things.
Are AI avatars overhyped right now?
I'm not sure how hyped they are, actually, to be honest. I guess my comment would be to share a little bit about both my own use and what we've learned a little bit inside of Zoom is, when you're in a lot of meetings all day long, sometimes, you need a break from the video. And as others in the meeting, they really, really, really appreciate an avatar that has some movement to just a video off. And psychologically, that's much, much better for other people in the meeting. And so if you need a break for a little period of time, I think that's really where the AI avatars, I think, are the most powerful. That's what I've seen and experienced myself.
Yeah, when I was a director or VP of product, I literally was triple booked from like 8 to 5.
Yep.
There was no time for lunch, for bathrooms, but you still have to dial into the meeting. So is that the time to use an avatar?
Well, I want to be clear. There's different kinds of avatars. There's an avatar when you're not there at all, and they're, attending the meeting on your behalf. That's one thing. I'm talking about, if I were to just, instead of have my face here, have an avatar, and if my video is still on, then that avatar will actually move the way I'm moving my head. If I have my video off, then we sort of create some motion in the avatar, etc. But all those use cases you mentioned are, very human examples of what it's like to not have a break to make lunch or go to the bathroom. And those are very, very powerful uses of avatars in meetings.
So you personally shifted from the meetings teams to webinars and live events, but I think also Zoom has made this big shift into broadcasts and live events. Mm-hmm. How is that shift going?
It's going really, really well. Webinars is a product that we've actually had for a very, very long time, pre-COVID, that is closely tied to meetings. And it is continuing to grow and is the market leader in that space. During COVID, we moved in the direction of larger, more complex events and a more complex or advanced events platform. And we have Zoom events right now, both growing really, really well. It's very clear that there's a lot of use cases. Marketers, educators, trainers all need this capability of communicating at scale. And that can take different forms, but we really support quite a range of use cases there. The events platform is more geared towards advanced customization and branding and teamwork collaboration and running a regular webinar program. We've got on-demand capabilities that we've built in, so you could build landing pages with video content of previous events and upcoming events. And so that's all growing really well. And we're also getting a lot deeper into the pro production aspects. So I like to think that we offer this range, a spectrum of capabilities where most people in a webinar just want to do the basic webinar and they don't have skills around production. We have a great new feature we launched a year and a half ago called Production Studio, which is sort of a simplified version of pro production. And then we also have these great tools from a company we acquired called Liminal. And those are getting a lot more advanced with the pro production stuff. And then we have integration with the major hardware and software platforms that are out there. So if you're a professional who puts events on for a living, we supply you with everything you need to use Zoom to turn those events into something really, really special.
A lot of people are talking about the future of meetings, and they're talking about async meetings. Can async replace live meetings?
I don't think it's a question of replacing. I think it's a question of having a number of tools to meet a number of needs. Without a doubt, the live meeting with no avatars, et cetera, is a very, very important use case. And like I talked about with avatars, there are cases where that's important. But there's also a huge power in async. And when you say async meetings, I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about. The thing I did right after what's that?
Things like clips,
Yeah,
Loom
yeah.
videos. It feels like everyone's saying, why is this a meeting? This should be a Loom video.
Yeah, so the right after I stepped away from running the meetings team, I actually went back to being an IC and built Zoom Clips, which is our async video product, and it's doing really, really well. We use it certainly internally a ton, and it's seeing some great growth. And I think that's a really powerful way to communicate because it's a very, very efficient use of video and screen share to communicate visual concepts that you just can't really do effectively in tasks. So we use it in communication. We use it in building product requirements. To answer your original question, it's not a question of replacing. I think it's just you might find yourself striking a different balance on which tools you use in which scenarios.
What part of Zoom's product is still stuck in 2020 and needs an overhaul? I don't know if I'd describe anything as being stuck in 2020 so much. I would just say that like any company that is growing as fast as we were and has as many products as we do, we've got our share of debt in various places like anybody, and we're constantly working to upgrade those. So that's probably how I would answer that. I don't know if anything's stuck in 2020. If there's areas that really need uplift, Zoom mobilizes very, very quickly, and we address those. What is your feedback system? How do you guys collect customer feedback internally?
We do it in a number of ways. We've got everything from a formalized program of taking in feature requests from customers and triaging those, et cetera, and then meeting with the team that does that. We do have a lot of qualitative surveys that are in the product that we send out and review on a regular basis. Zoom, as a very, very well-known brand, we get a huge volume of comments in public fora and social media. So we have a team that reviews that and parses that. We've got a really robust and growing Zoom community where all our customers are on, and there's tons of feedback coming in there. All product people at Zoom are brought into conversations with customers sort of on a live ad hoc basis. And then, of course, we've got Zoom Chat, which is our enterprise chat tool, and there's constantly messaging going there with customer-facing teams. So there's actually a ton of ways that we get that feedback. And one of the things that customers love about Zoom is that we listen and we move really quickly. And so you'll get a turnaround on a feature from Zoom at a pace that our competitors just don't match. So that part's exciting. It's a challenge to sometimes do that, but you can really see the delight when you talk to customers about that fact.
What's the most overhyped trend in meetings?
I guess I'd say I'm not sure if anything is really overhyped. I think it's sort of meetings has become, firmly part of everyone's work life. And I'm not really I'm not tracking anything that's overhyped. One of the exciting things is where meetings will go in terms of the end-to-end life cycle, and Zoom is really focused on building a great program there with meeting summary and automated tasks, et cetera. But yeah, were you thinking of anything in particular around overhyped?
So I think the thing that goes viral most often about meetings is this idea of having someone, an AI, interview for you. But I don't know if the tech is actually there yet. It feels overhyped to me.
Oh, well, if that's actually something people are hyping, I would say that's probably overhyped. But I think it also it touches on a much broader topic with regards to AI that goes beyond meetings as well, which is, the joke is that teachers are using AI to create tests and students are using AI to answer them. So AIs are just testing each other. And it's kind of a funny thing to say in jest, but there's like a deep truth underlying that. And there's tons of areas where we're going to have to figure out the difference between AI and reality, and where you have to insist on reality and how you insist on reality, right? So if you're testing somebody in an interview or in an educational setting, if it's not actually in person, there will be challenges, and I don't think we know the answers to those, and those are things we'll have to navigate.
Is there anything you can do as an interviewer to validate that the person you are interviewing is real? Or is there anything that Zoom does on your end automatically to help interviewers with that?
Not that I'm aware of. I'd have to think about that. I don't know, maybe pick up the latest newspaper and show them today's date. I don't know. I think they do that in hostage situations. Maybe a grim example, but yeah. I mean, I'm not aware of anything that we're doing on that front. I'm also not aware that that's actually a challenge. I've done some interviewing recently, and I'm pretty sure it was not an issue, I think.
Just ask them some question that the AI is not trained on. What is the color of the shirt you're wearing? I don't know. There's got to be a way.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of ways. Of course, that starts getting a little bit awkward when you're trying to test whether or not it's the case in an interview scenario. But it's a great question.
Yeah, I think the latest is like, put your hand over your face with this item in your background. I've been hearing. So people are trying weird things. It's weird that in 2025, that's what we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're a lot closer to that than I am. I read, a fair bit about what's going on in the tech world, et cetera. But yeah, I still think you're touching on something that's really broad with AI, which is all around the authenticity and when you need to care and when you don't, and how you solve for some of those cases. The education one that I mentioned is really, really fascinating, because students are now actively using AI for everything. And so what does that mean as an educator, and how do you evaluate students having learned material? I think it's really, really a good question and a difficult question. I don't know if we know the answer.
Today's episode is brought to you by the AIPM certification on Maven. Run by Mikdad Jaffer, who is a product leader at OpenAI, this is not your typical course. It's 8 weeks of live, cohort-based learning with a leader at one of the top companies in tech. OpenAI just doesn't stop shipping, and this is your chance to learn how. Run along with product faculty and Mo Ali, the course has a 4.9 rating with 133 reviews. Former students come from companies like OpenAI, Shopify, Stripe, Google, and Meta. The best part? Your company can probably cover the cost. So if you want to get $500 off, use my code AAKASH25 and head to maven.com/product-faculty. That's maven.com/product-faculty. So I want to shift gears a little bit. We've been talking a lot about the past, present, and future of Zoom. I want to know how people can use Zoom well. Can you walk us through some of the features people might not be using on Zoom but should?
Okay. Let me walk you through some of my favorite things in Zoom meetings here. I'll start sort of left to right. We've got the audio video, which everybody knows about mostly, turning on your audio and video, but some of these items in this submenu are really exciting. Adjusting your background here is where you can upload virtual backgrounds. We've got avatars that you can choose. We have video filters, studio effects. There's been lots and lots of great feedback online about how Zoom really makes you look good. This is where you can find sort of all of those goodies, which is very, very exciting. Chat, I think everybody is familiar with. I can bring up that side panel though, and I'll just send a test message here. What a lot of folks, might not leverage here is you actually have this ability to create a new chat. And if somebody were in this meeting with me, I would be able to chat with them. So now you've got basically a really easy way to have both the group chat for the main meeting as well as individual chats now separated. And we've got all sorts of capabilities down here around emojis and other ways to embellish chat. That's exciting. On the reactions front, here, the send with effect is really an exciting thing here, where if I do that, you get sort of some of these effects. So there's also the option just to have the standard reaction here, and then you've got some controls as well. On the share sheet, let's see what we got here. This is a fairly standard screen share here. One exciting thing is this Documents tab, and in particular, if I were to share a Zoom doc, what you get here now is the ability to create a new doc, and that now becomes a collaborative canvas. So other participants in the meeting can actually edit directly on this and navigate this. So that's actually a really powerful capability for Zoom Docs. And Zoom Docs is a new product from Zoom that is doing really, really well. I use it for, earlier in the podcast, I talked about organizing hundreds or thousands of things. So Zoom Docs is my vehicle for that. AI Companion is another really exciting thing. I mentioned that earlier in the podcast. And AI Companion is just this side panel that shows up in the side of the meeting. We've got a couple of hero prompts here. If you showed up in the meeting late, we've got Catch Me Up, and Catch Me Up will basically provide you with a summary of the meeting up until that point. You've also got free form questions that you can ask here, and then of course you can have a dialogue with the AI as you would in any chat interface. So that's a very, very powerful capability.
How did you guys write that? So you basically have like a live transcription going, and then you probably hook up into like an OpenAI API to like answer questions or something like that? Or how did you guys build that?
Yep, it's something along those lines, right? So you have to turn on the AI so that we do get the transcript, and then the transcript can be leveraged to provide those types of tools. And then when the AI is enabled as well, that's also the tool that we use to generate the meeting summary, which is something that shows up after the meeting is over.
Got it. Are there any cool recent things you've asked the AI companion that people might not have thought of?
Yeah, I think we've seen some sort of more funny use cases where we're in a team meeting and somebody makes some comment that is a little more high entertainment value about what's going on in the world, and then you can ask AI to summarize, what did Jeff say, and you get some pretty good answers. So it's
interpreting people.
What's that?
Yeah, interpreting people.
Kind of interpreting people, but you can ask it any questions. It applies to the open web, and so you can just sort of use it as a resource to use inside of the meeting really, really quickly.
And all that's private, right? Nobody else is going to be able to see that.
That's right. That's right. So that AI companion window I showed you, that's your panel for you, and then you can choose to share some of the responses. Cool. Let's see what else. We got whiteboards here. So this is another powerful feature that we built up over the last couple of years that is now a really, really powerful whiteboard product. When I joined Zoom, there was the very, very basic whiteboard product that many people are familiar with. This is actually a fully capable whiteboard product you can use inside of a meeting as well as after. So any of these docs or whiteboards that you create in a meeting are available after the meeting as well. This is also a collaborative canvas, so other people in the meeting can work on this with you. So you can co-edit these things, and you'll see there's a difference between screen share and collaboration, where with Zoom Docs and with Zoom Whiteboard you actually can co-create together, which is a really, really powerful thing, and we use that quite a bit.
When's the last time you used that? What did you use it for?
I'm a big boxes and arrows guy, so when I'm trying to explain concept, I like to draw boxes and arrows. So I make it very visual and try to avoid the danger of everybody having something different in their mind. So I use it pretty regularly in my team meetings when we're brainstorming on something. I'm like, okay, let me just draw some boxes and arrows. And then I'll use that afterwards to actually elaborate on that, and that can actually become part of the spec as it evolves, and people can chime in on that as well.
Yeah, kind of like use the meeting to write your initial drafts of whatever document you're building.
Yeah. That's the idea. I mean, it depends how far you go in the whiteboard in the meeting, but that's the idea. Yeah.
Got it.
Let's see. This is the Zoom Docs pop-up. So again, this is where you can look at your recent documents. You can create a new one. You can even take private notes, but that's a really, really powerful capability. I think folks are familiar with the captions. Polls and quizzes is also a great feature that we've got there. You can build those polls afterwards. You can create it inside of the meeting. And that's a little bit more for, formalized meetings. It's certainly big in webinars, et cetera. And yeah, well, you can reorder all of these icons. That's another big thing. And there's all sorts of settings. So those are some of the highlights. I think, the other things I would share is going back to what you said about having lots and lots of meetings, right? I get good at keyboard shortcuts for audio and video. I get good at keyboard shortcuts for going back to the main interface. I use the right-hand panel in the Zoom client to see all my upcoming meetings. You can hook it up to your calendar. And if you use Zoom Calendar, it's even easier. And that's really the quickest way to get to your next meeting. And so some of the expertise around using Zoom is some of that workflow management. And for me, keyboard shortcuts are one of those ways.
So you just walked through so many features. I return back to my earlier concern a little bit of, as a product leader, we all face this, where we're creating all of these features. How do you think about providing that simplified, highly performant experience, which is what Zoom really grew on, right? Is compared to Google Meet, compared to WebEx, Zoom is lightweight client, it's highly performant, works on all devices, works in bad internet. How do you balance that, simplicity core with all these other features?
Well, I think the most important thing to keep in mind is to get the important things right. And so, in the case of video conferencing, and certainly it was the case for Zoom, which is part of why I think it took off during COVID, is the ability to join the meeting. And joining a video conferencing meeting is actually a lot more complicated than people think. There's all sorts of challenges with audio and video and external peripherals and all that. But keeping the main thing, I think is really important. So joining the meeting, managing audio, video, and screen share. And I think, that today is as easy as it always has been with Zoom. I think as you add more things, it does get trickier. One of the challenges we faced when COVID really took off is every persona in every segment use Zoom for every use case. And so, of course, as a product leader, how on earth do you manage that? And so I think, keeping the main things straightforward, the happy path needs to remain happy. I think there is a balance to be struck around not putting everything up at the fore. I think you do need to make decisions about what gets a little bit removed from the front interface. And nobody really likes to make that decision because discovery becomes a challenge. But the reality is, for some things, I think they have to be below the surface. People who want those features will likely go and find them and figure out how to use them. And, the great challenge we have is, there's lots of features and functionality in Zoom, like you said, but there's an audience for all of them. And so not all of them are used by everybody, but everybody uses everything that's in there. And so that comes from us supporting just so many use cases and so many user segments.
So we walked through these features. What's the most powerful feature that not enough people are using?
I think some of these newer, I don't know if they're features so much as product capabilities, but the AI companion and the meeting summaries that get generated, if you're not leveraging those, you're definitely missing out. They're very, very powerful. They're very, very accurate. And they're really, really a tremendous addition to the meetings product. I would also say the collaboration tools, Zoom Docs and Zoom Whiteboard. So, those are partial features of meetings, but they're also standalone products on their own right that you can use sort of in both ways. I think that's really some of the more powerful things that we've released in the recent past. Those came after my tenure leading the meetings platform, but they're really, really powerful and we use them. I use them all the time.
I feel like whiteboarding is the one, right? Because part of the problem with Zoom fatigue that we keep hearing about is that the meeting doesn't feel interactive. And I think that's a really good way to open up the interactivity.
Yeah, fatigue is an interesting challenge. It's not Zoom specific. It doesn't matter. If you have a job that requires lots of video conferencing, there's that type of fatigue. But I think you're right. Some of the alleviation of that comes in the nature of the meeting you have with somebody. How much you allow it to go a little bit off track, so you can have a more entertaining interaction, and then just working together on something where you get sort of absorbed in co-creating rather than just sort of listening.
So PMs in particular, we have so many meetings. How should we manage having so many meetings?
Well, I think part of that is being proactive about whether or not you accept meetings and doing things like calendar maintenance ahead of time, insisting on agendas and productive meetings that you attend, thinking about pre-reads. I think all of those can help. We talked earlier about async. I think that can actually play a pretty good role, not only in maybe not having a meeting because you can share something async, but also if you do have a meeting, making it a lot more effective. I think there's something to be said for getting good at the tool. If you've got a lot of meetings, how can you, like you said, maybe you have a listening meeting where you put on your avatar and you can make lunch if you're in that scenario. So some of it is getting familiar with the tool. But I like to think some of it is more upstream about what I mentioned with just, does the meeting have an agenda? Is it going to be productive? Do I need to be there? So sort of calendar discipline.
How do you personally, as a head of product, exercise calendar discipline? What are the meetings you're most frequently saying no to?
Most frequently saying no to, I think, there's a tendency when an issue arises with a customer or there's an urgent ask for something to quickly call a meeting. And those meetings can really be chaotic and not very productive. And I find myself sort of asking, like, what is this meeting about? Where are we at? And, in my role, for efficiency's sake, I often ask for something to be a little more further along or synthesized before I dive in. Because otherwise, they're very, very time consuming and not super good use of my time.
Are there meetings that PMs aren't calling, but they should be calling?
That's a good question. My immediate reaction to that is not really a yes. My team at Zoom, or the various teams I've been on, all very, very proactive in communication. We use our enterprise chat tool, just like anybody, all day long. I wouldn't really say that's an issue, sort of in my experience, certainly not at Zoom.
The one I would say, even for my own personal self, is being willing to go in front of senior leadership when you have a win. I think sometimes we only want to go to senior leadership when we need their input or we need more resources, but then you end up seeming like the person who always needs more resources. One of the things I started shifting later in my career is, hey, we had a big win. If I'm going to meet up with my CPO the day before in my one-on-one, I'll say, hey, we're going to be reviewing the results in depth on this win. It wasn't on your calendar, and I know you have a lot of things going on, but if you want, I can add you to this.
Yeah, that's a great point. Although we have different avenues to actually share that type of info, and that's partially my job. I've got a standing chat channel with e-staff just pertaining to topics on my product, and when we have big wins, I certainly put them in there. When we have launches, I put them in there, and that usually generates some, emoji reactions and some good conversation. We also have a quarterly business review where we present to the CPO and our chief design officer, and part of that template also includes, wins for the quarter, et cetera. So we do have ways of advertising those. Your point is really a good one, though. It's, for people who tend to not want to draw attention to themselves or highlight, the good things for themselves for fear of sounding like they're bragging, that can be a real topic to think about, because if you don't tell folks, they probably aren't going to know. And if there's good stuff going on, it's your job to sort of share that. So I personally have also learned how to strike that balance, because I'm not boastful by nature. In fact, the opposite. But when there's good stuff going on, I got to sort of vouch for myself and the team a little bit.
100%. So we've been talking about using Zoom as a PM. Unfortunately, a lot of PMs in the last couple of years have found themselves on the back end of layoffs or years of efficiency-related firings, or they're just seeing that the market is opening up now, finally. PM jobs are up 50% from the bottom, and they're popping their heads up for an interview. Are there any interviewee-specific tips for Zoom you would highlight?
For Zoom, we look for clear communicating. And so somebody who's very, very structured in the material they're presenting. We look for evidence of impact, where you've, worked on something substantial and, it was successful. We also look for, the right sense of urgency. It's a really, really big part of the Zoom's culture is to move very quickly. And, if you're taking a few days to do this and a few days to do that, then that's going to be a cultural mismatch. So we try and identify for that. Eric is very, very famous for wanting to move very, very fast. And, he's, of course, right. Speed is a very, very powerful weapon. You, of course, want to be all going in the same direction, in the right direction. But those are a couple things that come to mind.
How do you think about your interviewee presence on Zoom, though? Are there things people should be thinking about in terms of whether they're using a virtual background or a blurred background, or how they're efficiently gesticulating, or how they have the right, video and audio setup? Do you think those things matter for interviews?
Yeah, I think they do. Maybe in the extreme case, right? If your light is really, really dark and I can't hear your audio, that's kind of a problem. But do you have to have a professional sounding setup? I don't think so. If your background is really suspect, that's probably, an alarm bell, but, I haven't really seen too much of that. I would maybe say a blur or virtual background can often be better than what some people actually have in their background. And, we wouldn't judge anybody based on that background, but, everyone's human. I think some of the other things you mentioned aren't necessarily different on Zoom than they are in real life. So the inflection of your voice and how much you use your hands and how you communicate, I think some of that comes across pretty well over video.
Yeah, I think a lot of the classics of communication apply to interviews, but it's worth paying attention to. It's not just the content of your response.
Yeah, I agree. The one thing that is maybe somewhat subtle is communicating over video requires a little bit more. I'm done talking and I'll stop and now I'll let you talk. And immediately talking at the tail end of somebody else where you're overlapping can get, it gets challenging. So it's almost like a slight change in how you go back and forth.
Yeah, should people be using raise hand more?
I think it depends on the nature of the meeting and the size of the meeting. Some meetings are a little more boisterous, and if there's only a couple people, I would say no. If you've got 18 people trying to talk about something significant, I think you almost have to. So it depends on the context.
I want to talk a little bit about what are the right meetings for PMs to have. And I'm really keen on this one of stand-ups. Are daily stand-ups just fake productivity?
I don't know if I'd call them fake productivity. I've never really experienced them to be super powerful. What I find really, really powerful for PMs is contextualizing your feature properly in terms of what problem you're solving and why you're doing it. And at Zoom, we have a framework called problem root cause solution. And so one of the most powerful things I think you can do as a PM is to focus really on the problem and root cause and not even the solution yet, and get alignment around that. Because then, once you have alignment on that, your solution is likelier to land, because if you don't have alignment on that, your solution could be the wrong problem due to the wrong root cause. So we spend a fair bit of time on that. And I think PMs who spend time articulating that very crisply and then sharing that and getting feedback on that. I think spend a lot less time reworking stuff later after they've done a solution. And the problem isn't the solution, it's that it wasn't solving the right problem and it didn't understand the actual root cause. So that to me would be more powerful than a daily stand-up. I try and stay very aligned with my PMs on what they're working on, and then give them lots of leeway around that. I don't need stand up to know that they're cranking.
What does getting clear on the problem and root cause look like in practice? What should an ICPM be doing in order to show that depth?
Well, I think on the problem side, it's really articulating what is going wrong. And on the root cause, which is the harder part, is like, why is this happening? And that can get into, I was going to say 5 whys, but sometimes it's 3 whys. But the root cause really is sort of the issue. And sometimes the root cause is, we just don't have that feature. But often the root cause is more the user's trying to do something and they can't. The user in their mind was expecting something else. And so that's actually where a lot of the challenges come. And then the other aspects of the problem root cause framework is also sort of how do you know this is a problem, right? Did you hear one person complain on social media, or is this like backed up by quantitative and qualitative data? And then the other big piece is why do we have to solve it now? Is this really more important than the things we got going? So if you nail all those, you're gonna be much more effective as an ICPM if you're not.
So there's that framework you mentioned, problem, root cause, solution. What else is unique about how Zoom builds product?
Unique about how we build product. We move fast. We are very keen to get things to market and into the hands of customers as quickly as we can. And then we listen and we iterate. And then, I mentioned earlier, we really do listen to customers very, very closely. And for the top stuff, we can move very, very quickly. We could get asked for something on Thursday and have it out by, the Monday morning after the weekend. So that's obviously not applicable to every single ask, but if you're listening closely, you understand how to read those tea leaves. That's a really powerful capability.
You've worked at a bunch of places that people would have heard of: Qualcomm, Hired, Blue Jeans. When you compare and contrast the product cultures, what are the most interesting vectors? How would you describe Zoom's?
I think just nimbleness. Zoom is like incredibly practical, incredibly nimble, incredibly fast. Leaders can go straight to ICPMs and vice versa, and it's not a lot of standing on ceremony and hierarchy. It's much more focused on execution. I think that's probably the biggest difference.
So if you're a product leader and you want to replicate Zoom's success, how do you create that nimbleness in your product team?
Well, I think you lead with a sense of urgency. You lead with moving quickly yourself. You lead by example around practical solutions, focusing on MVP and iterating. I think a lot of it is about leading with example and stepping in front of things that are scope creeping and getting too big.
How do you guys handle planning?
We have different planning cycles. I think the biggest rhythm of business we have is our quarterly business review, where on a quarterly basis we share, what happened in the past quarter and where we're going over the next quarter, and that view is fairly precise over the next quarter. And then we also share some longer term items that obviously decrease in precision as you go a little bit further out. But that's our main planning rhythm, and every team's responsible for that. We share that in a 2-day QBR every quarter with the CPO and the CDO.
What have you guys learned running these QBRs? What's your playbook for running an effective QBR?
Well, we have a template, and we've got a great product ops team that holds everyone accountable to getting that template done and holding the schedule on time, because we've got a lot of different groups presenting over a couple days. So a lot of that is the logistics. We do a pre-read before everybody presents, which is also very useful. So the focus is actually more on discussion and questions than it is just presenting slides. And ideally they're available before the QBR as well, and you can pre-read those, but it does get to be a lot of material. So we build in pre-read time. I think those are some of the most effective tools that we use for that. Because when I first joined Zoom, it was, product and design in total was 20 people, and everybody could walk through their slides, and we could take an afternoon, and it was fine. But at scale, that doesn't work.
How do you scale that? How do you manage who is going to which sessions? I know PMs always want to see the other people's sessions. What's the right attendee list for these?
Well, everyone, all the product and design and eng is invited to whatever sessions they want to attend. The triad is expected to be there for theirs. And it's a key quarterly window to discuss with the CPO and the CDO everything you got going, answer their questions, and share what your plans are, et cetera. And for everybody else, it's you attend what you want to attend. At Zoom, in my experience, we have very high attendance for almost all of the sessions because people are very interested in what's going on with other products, and so hasn't really been an issue in terms of managing that. And it's also been pretty good when you have a lot of people in a big forum. People learn how to use asynchronous comms a little bit more than everybody trying to get airtime. That's also not really been an issue, so that's good.
How precise is too precise? How much are you guys defining features in advance, estimating impacts in advance for that upcoming quarter?
I think we're pretty practical about it. I think, what's the saying? Plans are useless, planning is priceless. I think it's really good to put a stake in the ground as to what you're going to build, but I've never seen my quarterly plan stay intact at Zoom for sure. It's just too dynamic an environment. There's too much going on, and we're too responsive, I think, to customers to really stick to that. And that's sort of understood. When new things come up, you gotta make those trade-offs. So I think we really do focus on the value of planning more than the plans. It goes back to that nimble theme.
How much of a metrics-driven culture are you guys? Are you guys signing up for specific metrics by PM or by head of product? What is the granularity level for metrics ownership?
Yeah, we're mostly focused on product level KPIs for the product leads, and they work with their team to achieve those. And we partner with GMs of our business to help meet some of the KPIs they've got on the go-to-market side.
And how do you handle it when, as a product team, you feel like you're delivering, but you're missing those metrics because of something that might be out of your control?
I don't know. That's part of life. I think you share all the things that you did do, and if you've measured the impact, share those. If you're aware of some things that were beyond your control, it's okay to share those as well. We can't control everything. Unless your KPI is very, very, very specifically in your control, there's going to be lots of stuff that has many things impacting it, right? All the way up to revenue and overall adoption. Like there's many moving parts. There's direct sales, there's online sales, there's free trials, there's marketing. So a lot of moving parts.
All right. Is there anything else people should know about how product is built at Zoom that they might not know?
I don't think there's really anything I haven't mentioned so far. We move fast. We use the problem root cause solution framework. We have regular UX reviews. We iterate quickly when we find something is not working in the hands of customers. Yeah.
You mentioned UX reviews. Are you guys adopting like AI prototyping tools internally?
Yeah, we're experimenting with those for sure. I would say we're still ramping up on how that might fit into the workflow. But yeah, I think that's a really interesting area in product and design and development is those prototyping capabilities. Because in my mind, if I'm more interested actually in the wireframe prototyping capabilities than hi-fi. Just because I think they're such powerful communication tools and they communicate very, very quickly how you're thinking about the product. So we're definitely exploring those.
Have you guys bought licenses for the PMs on any of those tools?
I think we're figuring out our plan. Yeah, I think that's probably likely.
Okay. Well, if we had more time, I'd ask a bunch more questions. For people who don't know, this podcast has been in the makings for over 6 months. So thank you for finally making it happen, John. It has been really my pleasure.
Well, thank you for the questions. Sorry it took us so long, but schedules were a little bit tricky, but we made it happen.
Awesome. I hope everybody likes this as much as I did. If people want to find you online for more, where can they go?
I am on Twitter, at Beckmania is my handle there. I'm on LinkedIn, first name, last name. Those are probably the two most prominent and easy ways to find me. And my Twitter account is largely around product, but I also sort of delve into fun stuff. I stay away from the heavy stuff, politics and all that. None of that.
Oh gosh, I don't even know how you can use Twitter without talking about politics these days.
Yeah, well, you skip a lot of tweets.
There's a lot of muted words.
Yeah.
All right. See you later, everybody. I really hope you guys enjoyed that episode. It would mean a ton to me and the team if you could please subscribe on YouTube, follow on Apple and Spotify podcasts, and leave a rating and review. Those ratings and reviews really help grow the show and help other people discover the show. And they help fund the production so that we can do bigger and better productions. Can't wait to share the next episode with you. Until then, see you later.